I was watching this video by Improvement Pill, and it really got me thinking about this sales team leader. He could predict who on his team would quit just by asking them one question after a tough day of door-to-door sales.
Oh, interesting. What was the question?
He just asked them, "Why do you think you made new sales today?" Sounds simple, right?
Yeah, totally.
But the answers were like really revealing.
I bet. This makes me think about this whole concept of the locus of control. It's this idea in psychology that, well, it measures how much people feel they control their lives.
Are you steering the ship or just hoping for the best?
Exactly. And those salespeople who blamed external factors, weather, the neighborhood, whatever, they were the ones more likely to quit.
Makes sense. If you don't think you have any control, why bother?
And today we're going to look at psychology of quitting, why people quit, what are the things that make people want to quit, and most importantly, how can people break free from that pattern of quitting.
Let's start with this idea of the locus of control. Have you heard of this before?
Yeah.
It's kind of like those personality quizzes. Introvert versus extrovert. But this is all about how we view our successes and failures.
Exactly. So the locus of control is really about where you believe the power lies in your life. Do you feel like you're in control of your own destiny?
Right.
Or do you feel like things just happen to you?
Interesting.
And this can have a huge impact on how we approach challenges, setbacks, and even quitting.
So how does this work in real life?
Well, let's imagine two athletes who are both training for a marathon. One of them, let's call her Sarah, believes that her success is really dependent on her effort and her preparation. She's got a good training plan, she adjusts as she goes based on feedback and stuff, and she really focuses on the things she can control.
So it sounds like Sarah has a strong internal locus of control, right? She's owning her journey.
Absolutely. Now let's say the other runner, we'll call him Mark. Mark believes his performance is really determined by outside things, like what the weather's going to be like on race day, or how good the other runners are, so he gets discouraged really easily. And he blames other things when he has setbacks, and ultimately he's probably more likely to just give up when things get tough.
That makes total sense. It's like that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly, and that's the power of this idea, the locus of control. It really shapes how we see things, how we make choices, and ultimately what happens to us.
So if someone is struggling with quitting, do you think that shifting their locus of control can actually help them stick to their goals?
I think it can be a really powerful tool. By understanding that you have control in your life, that your effort and choices really matter, you can start to break free from that feeling of helplessness that often leads to quitting.
This is really fascinating. It's making me think about how I deal with challenges. But I am curious, are there other reasons why people quit? Besides this whole locus of control thing, it feels like sometimes we're programmed to give up.
It's definitely not always straightforward. Sometimes the reasons we quit are deeply rooted in our experiences, our fears, even the way we were raised.
Now you've got me hooked. Let's talk about these other factors that maybe we don't always realize are making us quit.
Well, let's start with something called a ditto effect. Have you ever found yourself going down a career path or setting a goal that wasn't really your passion, but maybe your parents or a mentor really pushed you towards it?
Oh, wow. Totally been there. When I was younger, I actually thought about going to law school for a bit because my dad thought it would be a really good career. But deep down, it just wasn't for me.
That's a perfect example. The ditto is all about adopting goals and values from other people without really stopping to think about if they fit with what you want and what you're good at. So this can lead to just not being motivated. And then eventually you quit when things get hard.
It's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Eventually, you just got to realize it's not going to work. But what about people who grew up being told they were gifted or talented all the time? Does that set them up for quitting too?
That's a great question. And it leads us to another common quitting archetype, the gifted child. Now, this might sound kind of strange, but if you're always told you're smart or talented when you're a kid, it can actually make you afraid of failure later in life.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
How does that even work? How can being told you're brilliant lead to quitting?
Well, imagine a kid who's always praised for how smart they are. They start to think that their worth is tied to being able to succeed without even trying. Now fast forward to adulthood. When they hit a challenge that takes real effort, or maybe they don't do well right away, it can feel like a threat to who they are.
So they'd rather quit and protect this image of being smart than risk failing and feeling like they're not good enough.
Exactly. The fear of not being seen as special or gifted can be paralyzing, and that's when quitting becomes their way of avoiding that fear.
That's but crazy to think about that our childhood experiences can shape how we view winning and losing.
Absolutely. We have these invisible scripts in our heads that tell us how to react when things get tough.
And those scripts can be super powerful, right?
Oh, even if we don't realize they're there. And speaking of powerful scripts, there's another quitting archetype that's really interesting, your own worst enemy.
Ooh, that sounds kind of scary. What's that one all about?
Well, it's basically self-sabotage. It's that voice in your head that whispers doubts and fears, and it ends up convincing you to quit, even when you're about to do something amazing.
Wait, I don't get it. Why would someone want to sabotage their own success?
I know it sounds weird, right? But often it comes down to a really deep fear of change, or this need to keep a consistent image of themselves, even if that image is negative.
So if someone has always seen themselves as like a failure or someone who can't achieve big things, actually succeeding would go against that whole belief system.
Exactly. And for some people, that kind of conflict is really uncomfortable. So they'd rather stick with what they know, even if it's not good for them, than risk changing who they think they are.
I'm starting to see how all these quitting patterns connect. We all have these little demons inside that want to keep us playing it safe.
That's a great way to put it. And the good news is, once we recognize those patterns, we can actually start to change them.
How do we actually do that? Where do we even start to deal with these beliefs and behaviors that are so ingrained?
Well, the first step is just becoming aware of them, like we're doing right now.
Right.
And then we can start talking about strategies for breaking free from these cycles of quitting.
Awesome. Let's help our listeners become quitters of quitting.
Love it. So first, if you realize you're like the ditto, following someone else's dream, take some time to really think about your goals. Are they really what you want? Or are you just doing what someone else told you to do? Talk to people who are already doing what you think you want to do. Try different things and see what really excites you.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about finding that thing where your skills and your interests and your values all come together.
Exactly. Now, for the gifted child, it's all about reframing how you think about failure. Instead of seeing it as a personal attack, see it as part of learning. Everyone makes mistakes, even the smartest people. And sometimes those mistakes lead to the best discoveries.
So it's about shifting from fixed mindset to a growth mindset, right? Embracing the journey, not just the destination.
Absolutely. And if you're your own worst enemy, you really got to work on challenging those negative beliefs. Start by paying attention to that negative self-talk. What are those voices in your head actually saying? Is it based on reality? Or is it just fear talking?
So it's like becoming a detective of your own mind, finding those hidden saboteurs and exposing them.
Exactly. And once you've identified those beliefs, start looking for evidence that proves them wrong. Think about times you succeeded, even in small ways, that go against those negative stories you tell yourself.
This is all great advice. But what about people who feel like they quit a lot? But it's not always in a bad way. What if they're just curious and want to explore different things?
That's a great point. And it brings us to this really cool concept, the Renaissance soul.
Ooh, I've heard of that. Tell me more.
So think about someone like Leonardo da Vinci. Painter, sculptor, inventor, scientist, he did it all. Renaissance souls are like that. They're multi-passionate, they love new things, they learn quickly, and they're often good at a lot of different things.
So it's not that they're quitting in a negative way. It's more like they're constantly growing and finding new challenges that match their interests.
Exactly. And instead of seeing this as a problem, they can actually see it as a strength. Imagine a life where you're not limited to just one career or one set of skills.
That sounds amazing. But how does someone with a Renaissance soul make that work in real life? It seems like it could be pretty chaotic to juggle so many different passions.
It definitely takes planning and self-awareness, but they can thrive by creating a portfolio career, finding ways to combine their different interests, and building a lifestyle that supports their need to explore and grow.
So it's not about just picking one thing. It's about creating a life where you can be your whole self.
Precisely. And who knows, maybe all that quitting you've done is actually a sign that you're meant for something even bigger and better.
This has been a total mind shift for me, going from the locus of control to all these quitting archetypes, and then the Renaissance soul idea.
It's really interesting how much our mindset and our past can shape how we feel about quitting. We often see it as a bad thing, but sometimes it's actually a good thing. It can be a sign that we need to make a change, or that we want to be more true to ourselves.
Right. It's not always about giving up. It's about making choices that will make us happier and more authentic.
Exactly. And the best part is once we understand these patterns, we can stop those self-sabotaging behaviors and actually use quitting as a tool to help us.
So, like, what's the main takeaway for our listeners today? What's one piece of advice they can use to stop those quitting demons and achieve their goals?
I think the most important thing is to be aware of yourself. Notice those times when you feel like quitting. Ask yourself, why do I feel this way? What's making me want to quit? Is it fear? Boredom? Am I not doing something that matches my values? Or maybe it's a sign that I should be doing something totally different.
So it's about being curious about why we do things and understanding what's really going on beneath the surface.
Exactly. And once you have that understanding, you can start to make better, more powerful choices. Remember, quitting isn't always a failure. Sometimes it's actually the best and bravest thing you can do.
This has been such an insightful conversation. Thanks for sharing your expertise with us.
Of course, it was great to be here. And remember, everyone, embrace your own journey. And don't be afraid to quit something that's not working for you anymore.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the psychology of quitting. We hope you learned something new today and that you're feeling inspired to face your own quitting challenges.
So to everyone listening, we want to hear from you. Which archetype resonated with you? Tell us in the comments.